Hey guys, I want to share my story about when I found out I had a brain tumor and cancer. So, March of 2014, I went on a family vacation with myself, my 3 children, and my 2 cousins that hold a very special place in my heart, and their daughter. So, after leaving the family vacation, I just started having headaches that would intensify over time, and so the headaches started about April, and they weren't just a regular headache. They were very intense, and I noticed like midsummer that smells would intensify these headaches, like the onset of smells like plug-ins, perfumes, floor cleaner, things like that would just set these headaches off. And they got to the point where I was taking like Advil, Tylenol, ibuprofen. Like that wouldn't work, so I upped it to like over-the-counter migraine medicine. And then it got to the point like when one of these headaches would come on, it made me lightheaded, my stomach would hurt, and I would just have to instantly go lay down. So now we're to November. So I'm at a staff meeting, and one of these headaches just come, and I mean, it takes me to the point that I'm in full-blown tears, and I'm at the staff meeting with my head leaned over, and I'm crying. And my supervisor, she has had cancer at this point twice, and she's had it for the third time at this point. And she comes to me after the meeting, and she's like, listen, you got to get this thing checked out. It could be something serious. Like, this isn't normal for you to have these headaches like this, and for them to overpower you to this intense. It may be like migraines, or maybe something more serious. So she's like, you need to get it checked out. So I called my doctor, and she's like, listen, can you come? The reception's like, listen, can you come now? How far are you? So I'm like, I'm not far away. At this point, I'm like 7 minutes from the doctor's office. So I go to the doctor's. I tell her everything that I've been experiencing. She sets me up for an MRI. So I'm standing outside the examination room talking to the lady that makes the MRI. And she says, listen, we just had a cancellation. Can you come over now? So I go over and get the MRI. So I'm putting my clothes back on from getting the MRI, and the tech knocks on the door, and she said, after you finish getting dressed, can you come to the office? So at this point, this is my very first MRI. I don't know the protocol. So I'm like, is this what they do? They bring you in the office to give you your results? So I'm like, okay. So I go in the room, and they have this desk, and they have the speakerphone sitting in the middle of the table. So it's someone at the speakerphone. So I say, hello? Like, I'm scared to even, question it. So it's my doctor on the other end, and she says, hey, I need you to repeat the test, but this time I want to do it with contrast. So if you don't know what contrast is, it's dye. So she wanted me to retake the test, but to do with dye. And she said, when you get finished, then I need you to come back to the office. And I'm like, I just left the office. Like, why do I have to return to the office? Because I have to report to work by 3. And she said, don't worry about that. And I'm like, what do you mean? So I redo the test, and I go to the office. So when I get to the office, I'm a bit scared at this point, because I'm like, why would she want me to come back to the office? So when I get in the office, she begins to tell me to sit down, and she has this look of worry over her face. You can tell when someone is about to tell you something. So she says, we found a brain tumor, and I'm going to take you out of work immediately, and I need you to see a brain surgeon. Immediately, I hit the floor, and I just began to cry. So I just whelped and snotted, and I mean, I couldn't get myself together. It took me about an hour to leave that office because I was devastated. So on the car ride to my job to give them the note that I would be out of work, I called everybody. I called my mom, my dad, my significant other, my cousins. No one answered for me. So it was me and God in that car, and I just began to pray and ask God to keep me because I had to finish raising my kids. So I get to my job and I proceed to give them the note to let them know I would be out of work. And before that happened, I had been going back and forth with my job about being off for Thanksgiving because that was, I was supposed to cook for my family, and then they had told me I had to work, and I was like, absolutely not. So the reception at work told me, she said, oh, so you went and got your doctor to write you a note so you could hadn't work. I had just got the most devastating news of my life. And you said I got my doctor to make me up a note. I let her have it. Like, you never know what somebody is going through. And at that moment, she didn't know I just had received the most devastating news of my life. And here she was being sarcastic. So this happened November 22nd. So I couldn't see the surgeon until December 7th. So I go in on December 7th to see him. And he proceeds to tell me that the brain tumor is the size of a grapefruit, and that we had to remove it immediately. So I'm like, he's adding more to my already scaredness. So he says, I'll be fine and I'll be back to work in 3 days after surgery. So I'm like, okay, he's confident. We asked him a ton of questions. So I felt really good about, getting it removed. It was no big deal. I'm like, okay. So February 5th comes and I have surgery. My family's there. I get surgery. I remember being wheeled up to the surgery room and scared to death. And I wake up from surgery. I could hear everything that's going on around me, but I couldn't wake myself up to respond. I remember my cousin screaming my name as I'm being wheeled to the ICU, and I'm like, why is she screaming? So days passed by. I was told I was there for 5 days. And I remember them sitting me up in the bed, and I just leaned over to the side and fell back onto the bed. Then they try to stand me up, but my legs won't move. And I'm like, I came here walking. Why can't I walk? So as a result of the brain surgery, I had to learn how to walk again. I lost my peripheral vision, and my nervous system was affected. During surgery, the surgeon came out and told my mother that the brain tumor was embedded into my brainstem, and that if he went further with the surgery that I wouldn't have lived. So they stopped, took the piece of the tumor and closed me back up. So I did therapy in the hospital, and their recommendation was for me to go to a rehabilitation center or a nursing home. I refused to go to a nursing home because in my mind, that was for old people. They said if I went home, that I would take up to a year to walk again or never possibly walk ever. I refused to give up. Like, that wasn't an option. So blood, sweat, and tears, I walked again. It took me about 2 months, and I walked. So the end of May, I was feeling, back to my normal. I still had pain, lots of pain, but I could move around. I could cook for my kids, do laundry, all the normal things. So in July, I just felt more intense pain. My balance was off horribly. So I had been to the ER maybe 3 times. I had been hospitalized. And then I learned that I had brain cancer. So here I was devastated all over again. And then I was told that chemo wasn't an option because my form wouldn't respond well to chemo. So I signed up for radiation. I hope this answers or your question of how I learned that I had brain cancer and a brain tumor.